What is the biggest unsolved mystery in human history? In 1893, British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans purchased some ancient stones with mysterious inscriptions on them at a flea market in Athens. On a later trip to the excavations at Knossos on the island of Crete, he recognized one of the symbols from his stones and began a study of the engraved tablets being uncovered at various sites on the island. He discovered two different systems, which he called Linear A and Linear B, while Linear B was deciphered in the early 1950s. It turned out to represent an early form of Greek. Linear A, above, has still not been deciphered. There is an entire culture of information that predates much of our history, a window into ancient humanity that is simply locked away from us because we don't know how to read it. An active one in the archaeology world is the exact time frame of when humans made it to the Americas. The date keeps getting pushed back with more controversial discoveries that then just turn to evidence as they pile up. It's a fascinating story to see unfold. In Australia, in 2011, someone broke into a TV station and spent 4 hours flushing $100,000 down the toilet. Late to the party, but I haven't seen anyone mention the Indus Valley script. There was a huge civilization in northern India and Pakistan around 3300–1300 BC. It spanned more area than any other civilization at the time. They invented writing independently, something only done 5 to 6 times in history. But to this day, with all the thousands of inscriptions we have and all the documented contact with other civilizations, we haven't deciphered their writing. There's no known Rosetta Stone, no known descendant scripts, no known documentation of the language other than what is written in the Indus Valley script. But the biggest mystery isn't how to read the script or what it says, but the question of whether we'll ever be able to know. Is it even possible to decipher a language we know absolutely nothing about? Edit. To all the people talking about AI, yes. I get it. AI is cool. But this is a far larger task than the pattern recognizing and replicating AI we have today can tackle on its own. Some AI has been used to find patterns in which characters go together most often. But this is a long shot away from being able to read the script. AI will have to be far more advanced than it is today to be able to crack this code. Edit 2. We should revive our Indus Valley as a place to discuss this for anyone really interested. So the monarch butterfly migrates to Mexico and back every year. During the year there are a full 4 generations of butterflies that live and die during the journey. Upon returning back from Mexico, the butterfly manages to find the same trees its relatives started out at despite never having been there. I read these threads and wonder how many disappeared people or homeless transients with no memory of who they are. There must be considerable overlap, I imagine. We like to think we understand the universe and that physics is a well-grounded discipline, and in some ways it is. However, we have no idea what dark matter or dark energy is, and yet we think it makes up 27% and 68% of the universe respectively. Why is there something rather than nothing? Is still pretty much at IMHO. The final words of the Emperor Titus were, "I have but one regret." We don't know and never will what that regret was. Edit. On reflection it's even better, I have made but one mistake. Supreme confidence. That most of human history is undocumented and we will never know our entire history as a species. We didn't start recording our history until 5000 BCE. We do know we shifted to agrarian societies around 10,000 BCE, but beyond that we have no idea what we were like as a species. We will never know the undocumented parts of our history that spans tens of thousands of years. We are often baffled by the technological progress of our ancient ancestors, like those in SE Asia who must have been masters of the sea to have colonized the variety of islands there and sailed vast stretches of ocean to land on Australia and New Zealand. What is ironic is we currently have an immense amount of information about our world today and the limited documented history of our early days as a species, but that is only a small fraction of our entire history. Neither medicine nor science has an answer for what consciousness is, or where it originates. I don't know about biggest, but I always thought the Voynich manuscript was very interesting. A huge book written in an unknown language or cipher that has never been translated or decoded with diagrams of plant species that don't exist. Lots of theories surrounding it, but no definitive answers as to the origins or the content. Not sure if it's the biggest mystery, but the Antikythera mechanism is pretty wild. Dated to at least 60 BC, possibly as old as 200 BC. It's as complex as clockworks that didn't show up until the 1400s, over a millennium later. It's just such a strange technological anomaly. Who made it? What else did they make, and why haven't we found more stuff as advanced? Between 1200 and 1150 BCE, most of the civilizations in the eastern Mediterranean region were either greatly depleted or collapsed entirely, bringing an abrupt end to the Bronze Age. These civilizations were massively depopulated, their palaces and cities were destroyed or abandoned, and some transformed into small, isolated village cultures or nomadic herders. The Greek Linear B script was lost, and there is no written record of the following period of Greek history, meaning that Greeks of the time were probably illiterate. This rapid decline affected, to one extent or another, major historical powers like Mycenaean Greece, New Kingdom Egypt, the Hittite Empire, and Assyria, among others. And we don't know why it happened. These were sprawling, thriving civilizations, with healthy economies, elaborate trade networks, complex bureaucracy, written language, and large-scale agriculture, and they just died. For some reason. There are plenty of theories, of course, but ultimately there's no conclusive evidence that tells the story of how the Bronze Age collapsed into the intermediate period that preceded the Iron Age. Why did we all just globally decide that those blue Dutch cookie tins hold sewing supplies? How the universe is even possible? Why the fuck do we even exist? I love unsolved mysteries, but one that always gets me is the murder of Missy Bevers. She was killed in the early morning at a church that she taught yoga at. Security footage from the church showed the murderer roaming the halls of the church all night, but that's not what's weird. What's weird is that the murderer was dressed head to toe in police riot gear. It is the weirdest and eeriest video footage and is just unsettling. There's lots of theories, but her murder has never been solved, and I believe there hasn't even been a real suspect in the case. No one knows exactly who founded Rome, or when. All known records of the city's early history date from the 5th or 6th century BC at the earliest, which doesn't help the usual foundation date of 753 BC. And all of the foundation myths are exactly that, stories. All we know with any certainty is that Rome was ruled by kings at some point in its early history. But we don't know who founded Rome, if it really was by a Romulus-type figure or if it was multiple villages that eventually merged into a single town. Even with the latter possibility, it's unknown when those communities would have considered themselves as a single town or when they decided to call it Rome. The Alps murders. To this day, not only is there no suspect but seemingly absolutely no motive to the murders of the Al-Hilli family and a completely unrelated French cyclist. The police don't even know who the target was. The more you look at the case, the more questions there are. The victims were killed in the manner of a professional hit, but using a gun that no professional would use. The gunman was experienced and calm enough to leave the scene quickly and efficiently. So much so that the cyclist on the scene minutes behind Mollier saw and heard absolutely nothing. The murders, though, were uncontrolled and carried out in broad daylight where anybody could have chanced upon the scene. Indeed, had Saad not beached his car trying to escape, most of the victims may have survived. No suspect. No motive. No clear target. Weird mix of professional hit and complete novice. This case baffles me utterly. I dearly hope to see it solved one day. So I have a personal experience, sort of. My father had a coworker who was a great guy. Good at his work. Fun to talk to. Nobody had any complaints about him. He lived in an apartment right next to work, so the night watchman at the workplace would see him whenever he went out. So one night, he went out in his pajamas, talking on his cell phone, nodded at the watchman. The watchman didn't think much of it. After all, it's not all that weird to take a walk even though it was quite late. He didn't think much of it. The watchman didn't see him come back, but he figured he missed him when he went on his bathroom break probably. But the guy didn't show up at work the next day. Someone from work went to check up and he wasn't there. Nothing was disturbed. He was just gone. Everyone thought he had dropped dead, killed by thugs or an accident or some medical condition. The workplace filed a police report. Here's when it gets weird. It turns out, the guy had created a fake identity. Any credentials he had given were fake. The references he had given had never heard of him. The family address he'd given didn't exist. The police didn't find anything illegal in the apartment, but they didn't find anything that would give a clue as to who he was either. We moved away a few years ago, but I don't think the case was ever solved. It's definitely the best unexplained mystery that I've personally come across. Edit. To answer some questions, I don't live in the US and there's no concept of witness protection here that I know of. My father was a pathologist at a women's hospital in a very small town and the guy worked as his technician. He definitely had some experience in the field before he joined. The job also wasn't a well-paid one as many employees would quit quite frequently. The lead mask mystery of Brazil. The bodies of two men found wearing lead masks covering their eyes with a notebook that mysteriously read, 4:30 p.m. be at the determined place. 6:30 p.m. swallow capsules. After effect, protect metals, wait for signal, in Portuguese. Back in 2002 I folded and placed three $100 bills in my back right pocket while standing in my living room. I grabbed my wallet from the bar, walked to the front door where I decided it was safer to transfer the $100s to my wallet. My pocket was empty. There was no one else home. I looked everywhere for more than an hour. This episode has seriously damaged my sanity and self-esteem. Who is going to Long John Silver's enough to keep them around? The disappearance of Asha Degree. 9-year-old Asha Degree disappeared from her home in Shelby, North Carolina on Valentine's Day 2000. She went to bed the night before, and when her mother went to wake her up in the morning, Asha was gone. She was seen walking along Highway 18 at around 4 o'clock in the morning. Several passing motorists saw her and when one turned around and began to approach her, she left the roadside and ran into a wooded area. It was a cold night and the witness said there was a storm raging when he saw her. She wasn't wearing a jacket or socks. A year after she vanished, a construction worker found her book bag in a wooded area. It was wrapped in a plastic bag. Did D.B. Cooper survive or did he die? Who is Jack the Ripper? Who murdered Elizabeth Short? Who murdered JonBenet Ramsey? In India, in the early 2000s there a creature called the Monkey Man, who was attacking the people living in Delhi and people were so terrified from him that they stopped sleeping in night so that they can protect themselves. We still don't know whether it was real or was it just a rumor that people started believing in. The murder of Atlantuya, Mongolian model. Nobody knows for sure what happened, but the general theory that Malaysia's former prime minister and his witch of a wife murdered her is generally accepted as truth. Poor woman had C4 strapped all over her body before she was blown up. Google the story and I'll be happy to fill in the gaps for any further info. My family are very close to politicians and I interviewed the lead investigator. Where is Jimmy Hoffa? Real answer is probably in multiple places.
It doesn't.
I would really like to know how bread was invented. Which madman looked at a field of wheat and thought to themselves, if we dry it and ground it, mix it with water, pound it into a ball and place it in a warm box for a while, it could be really delicious. And don't get me started on yeast.
It doesn't.
Why does Donald Duck put a towel around his waist when he gets out of the shower if he doesn't wear pants?
It doesn't.
Who blew up the Georgia Guidestones?
It doesn't.
The Fermi Paradox. There are more solar systems out there than grains of sand on the Earth, but absolutely zero evidence of type 1, 2, 3 civilizations.
It doesn't.
Where the fuck did my 10mm socket go?
It doesn't.
The Bronze Age collapse.